Thunderchild10 asks, what's the worst thing you've seen at work? A buddy of mine was coming off a trailer on a stand-up forklift, and the driver pulled off on him. We weren't supposed to be using the stand-up lifts to load trailers, but the sit-down lift was being used at the time. The driver had been coming to our site for years. They were never allowed to touch the dock lock or wheel chocks. For some reason that morning, though, the driver unlocked his trailer, unchocked his tires, and started to pull off right as my buddy was coming off the trailer. The forklift fell on him, crushed both hips and one arm. The watch on his other arm snagged the top of the dock and ripped the skin all the way to his elbow. He survived, but he was an amazing artist, and they had to fuse most of his fingers together so he was never able to get back to the same level. I've got a PC tower that he did for me before the accident. It has the Incredible Hulk on one side with blonde hair and mustache, dressed like Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt open. The other side is the Thing with a blonde wig and a purple sparkling robe like Ric Flair. They each have a dog collar on their necks tied to each other like they are about to have a match. I was a head lifeguard for 5 years. I saved people from drowning and patched up a bunch of injuries. The scariest thing that ever happened, though, was a random night at the indoor pool during free swim. A 15-year-old boy dove off the diving board, cracked his head on the bottom of the pool and got knocked out unconscious. It was just me and one of guard there, but we just did what we had been trained to do. We cleared the pool, had someone call 911, went down and performed a deep water spinal rescue, got the kid out. Thankfully he regained consciousness, and we sent him to the hospital to have his head patched up and evaluated. A few months later, that same boy was sitting in I was a certified instructor as well, lifeguarding course, and he became a coworker and friend, general maintenance worker for an assisted living facility. I get a call from my boss on the walkie to bring full-gown PPE, face shield, booties, and gloves to room 7. This was pre-COVID, mind you, so out of the ordinary. A rich guy had moved in directly from rehab after his wife left him. He was maybe 50-ish and a heinous alcoholic. He had smuggled booze in the night before and was trashed. I'm talking lying on the floor naked, covered from head to toe in black sticky bloody shit and vomit. He had such bad ulcers, his shit was like black sludge. The smell permeated the halls and could be noticed from the opposite end of the facility. He was basically doing snow angels and breakdancing in his bloody vomit and shit. He had literal clumps in his hair. He was also violent and combative. Why we didn't just call an ambulance is beyond me. Me and 2 other maintenance guys had to get him in the shower and restrain him while an aide cleaned him up. The smell I will never forget. I actually almost passed out from having to physically exert myself for so long while holding my breath. He also had the heater cranked up, and the room was like 90 degrees. I was expected to deal with that mess while making fucking $14 an hour. I also had to clean the walls, floor, and bed afterwards. My life fucking sucks. Used to work at a Walgreens. One night, a homeless guy who had been jumped stumbled to the first aid aisle in the back and tried to get some band-aids/bandages/gauze, but was losing consciousness and waddled back to the front. This whole time, he was pouring blood from his neck all over the floor. Someone had cut his neck deep from under each ear all the way across. We walked him outside and tried applying paper towels to the wound and keep blood in. He wouldn't talk. It took the ambulance 3 hours to get there, and they could barely get him to talk as well. It was a lot of blood in the store. He was basically a zombie. I was a 911 dispatcher. The worst I saw was one of the other dispatchers I worked with describing a call she took overnight. She was telling us about it at shift change. A guy got shot and called 911 himself. She was crying, laughing, describing how he was gasping for air as he died. I worked a few shifts with her while training, and the first 911 call I took she was listening in on. It was a lady who witnessed a car accident. It was a motorcycle versus car. The biker was nowhere to be found, and once the lady found him laying in a ditch all fucked up, she started crying and freaking out. Pretty intense call for a first 911 call. After the call was over, she said I did great dealing with the whiny bitch on the phone. She was crazy. A woman that was a janitor in my building had an aneurysm, but died as I performed CPR. Got a mouthful of blood because her lungs filled up. This was before CPR PPE was in widespread use. A 5-ton capacity jib crane broke free from a column and struck a coworker in the head. He survived, but was never able to work again. The installation company used previously used over-torqued fasteners to install the crane. There's a reason new hardware and specific torque specs are used in high-load applications. No, the crane wasn't overloaded. But the worst was when I was a teenager, unwillingly, helping my dad paint a steel tank in conditions that would be considered a confined space. I had a date scheduled and had absolutely no concept of the danger he was in. I went and changed in the bathroom to go on my date, got back, and he'd passed out in the tank. I had to pull him out of the tank and outside. Luckily, he came to and was okay. I was also lucky that my mom smacked him in the face for not effectively explaining why I was there. The old man was a fiercely intelligent and tough MF, but had the communication abilities of a 12-year-old. I watched a man burn so badly, he died of complications the next day. We operated large riding lawnmowers for a public school system. His machine had a bad fuel line, and his clothes were unwittingly being misting with gasoline until the heat from the exhaust system ignited the gas, setting him and the mower up in a massive flame. We were near access to running water, but no extinguisher. There was an attempt at rolling out the flame, but he had so much fuel on him it didn't do much. Not to mention the pain and panic he was likely feeling. Our initial efforts to put out the fire on him didn't do much until, I assume, the gas had burned off. Right after, anything that could absorb water, like towels, spare shop clothes, our own clothes we wore, we saturated in water and laid on him. The professionalism and swiftness I saw with the ambulance, police, and fire department was nothing short of amazing. I see how so many can idolize them as heroes after disaster. I really believed he would be all right in that moment. But despite their efforts, he did not make it. That was probably the worst thing I've objectively seen, though. It doesn't really haunt me or cause trauma. But it was an unforgettable reminder to respect the danger of my work and never underestimate the speed of fire. For those curious, there was a lawsuit that settled for an unknown amount with the family. I don't work there currently, but I did for 3 summers while I was in university over the summer years ago. For prevention, they switched all mowers to diesel, which will not ignite under similar circumstances. They also require a safety point check and visual inspection of all equipment to be logged daily. A horrible accident where no sole person is responsible, but one that tragically could have been avoided. I was doing demo work as a temp at a school that was being renovated. Light rain that morning, so it was sort of nice with the dust being manageable. I was pushing a wheelbarrow to a debris pile when a loader touched a power line and shorted out, killing the engine. Big blue flash, so everyone looked over as the driver opened the door and stepped down into a puddle and exploded in a huge ball of fire and sparks. He was dead faster than thought, and we all got sent home with full pay for the day. Smelled terrible. Years later, I was a garage door tech and was at a service call for a broken torsion spring. There was a stripe of blood and gore over the door, where the homeowner had attempted to replace his own spring. This was before internet was widely available. He used a socket set to remove the center spring mount, not realizing he had 2 springs on it. Once the lags backed out enough, it spun on him, shredding his right hand and forearm. They saved his hand, but the mess was there and I had to deal with blood, skin, and flesh all over everything. He was watching me and describing it all as I worked. Thank you for watching. If you found this interesting, please consider hitting like and subscribe for more videos.